But before we begin, hands up who's wearing true vintage or antique. Oh, okay. I think we've answered our question. End of the stream. Bye, everybody.
Video over.
That's it. Thanks, guys.
That was very nice. See you guys next time.
The experts have spoken. It is okay to wear antique. So hello and welcome back to my humble channel. In today's video, we'll be discussing the question, is it okay to wear antiques? Of course, we're not talking about ancient artifacts or items of immense historical value like those belonging to Winston Churchill or Abraham Lincoln, but we're talking about the kind of standard kinds of antique clothing you can find on the vintage market. There are many historical costuming channels out here, and most of them run by the ladies seem to take lots of good care of their antiques, and they pad them all up in tissue boxes and put them under the bed in a nice acid-free box. But the lads, we seem to just throw it on and go out caroling. So it's completely different. So we thought we'd ask the question. So we have some special guests joining the channel today by way of this magical Zoom call. So we have fashion historian and meme mum herself, Karolina Żebrowska.
Hi.
And we have historical tailors and collectors Tom van het Hof and Jonny Haart.
Hello.
Okay, and I'm also here. So how I kind of envision this working is that I'll ask a question and I'll try and mediate between you guys if necessary. So you've all got the little document here so you can see the order that your names are in. So the first thing is, could you just briefly introduce yourselves? So let's start with Karolina.
Yes, hello. Who am I? I'm a vintage fashion enthusiast and a YouTuber accidentally. And yeah, I do wear some old stuff every now and then.
Okay, I don't think she really needs an introduction. I think everybody watching will know you very well. So how about you, Jonny? This side?
Again, vintage and antique fashion enthusiast, mainly menswear. I also am a freelance costume designer and I'm teaching myself tailoring.
Okay.
So,
And Tom?
Well, as you've heard, I'm Tom. I'm a bespoke tailor by profession, and besides that, I also collect vintage and antique menswear, which I wear on a daily basis, combined with what I make myself and, well, whatever I like, really. So that's basically it.
Okay, so in other words, we're all credible people and you should believe absolutely every word we say is gospel.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's some quick fire questions to get us in the mood. So the question is, how do you treat your antiques? So like storage, cleaning, altering, that kind of thing. So let's start with Karolina again.
Very badly. No, I think it depends. If it's something really old, I felt very called out by the acid-free tissue and storage boxes because that's exactly what I'm trying to do. The issue is that the boxes are quite expensive, so obviously not every piece I own ends up in those, but you know, as much as possible. And also it takes so much space. Like if I wanted every single piece to be laid out properly, I would probably just have to buy a huge mansion and just store it there. But the things that are like 1930s and later, I would just store in my wardrobe because that's what I wear. And cleaning is a bit problematic, especially when it comes to stuff like jackets and generally speaking, anything that has a lot of layers and constructions and stuff that maybe doesn't deal with water that well. So I'm trying to soak it in like lukewarm water and just use some gentle soap. But I still feel like that's maybe not necessarily what I should be doing in like every case. So like I am still trying to research possible ways to clean things, but I feel like maybe I'm just too lazy to properly read about it. I'm just like, I just throw it in a bathtub and let's see what happens, you know.
You researched all of these clothes and now you have to research how to clean all of these clothes. It's like the same amount of work.
That's like, I didn't sign up for this.
Okay, so let's ask Tom, how do you deal with yours?
Well, the good thing about vintage menswear in general is that it's made from very heavy, thick fabric, which can really pack a punch in general. So when it comes down to storing, well, I just hang it on a clothes hanger and let it air out every now and then, and just provide a sort of safe environment, which means that not an entire colony of moths can get to it and those sorts of nasty things. And the difficult thing, I think, more is, well, cleaning it, because, well, summer wear, for example, Palm Beach suits or cotton, linen, or tropical jackets, those you can basically just throw into the washing machine without much afterthought. Whereas with woolen suits, yeah, those you can only really hang out, steam, and brush. But yeah, that's a bit more difficult, but that's also the best thing to do then is to prevent having to clean it by just being careful with it. And, well, in terms of maintaining, yeah, just every now and then darning, ironing, pressing, but not too much of anything extreme, really.
Yes. Don't eat chocolate ice cream when you're wearing your Palm Beach trousers, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I guess me and Johnny have probably got to say very similar things, but Johnny, do you want to touch on this as well?
Yeah, again, fairly similar to Tom. I do generally steam. I've got a nice clothes steamer, so I steam them quite a bit. And I have a nice antique clothes brush, so I use that. Generally storage, again, wardrobe most of the time. A lot of stuff in suit bags. Just to give a bit more extra protection there. And again, depending on the jacket, if it does seem like it's quite, when you get some antiques, sometimes they've got a lot of muck just built up in them, or smoke or something like that. So I either air it, or I have done some soaking before, again in warm water, with like a wool detergent and quite soft. Again, stuff with cotton and linen, if it's got a stain, I do a soak with them to remove the stain and stuff. So those sort of things. Again, darning little repairs.
Yeah.
Again as well.
You bring up a good point. Most of these clothes have been sitting in boxes for maybe even 100 years. What the hell were they getting up to? Like, how on earth did they get so dirty? It's like Toy Story, but with handkerchiefs or something. I don't know what they're doing. Okay. Yeah, go on, Johnny.
Yeah, I've had stuff that's arrived and, the lining's meant to be a cream lining, but it's more a brown lining because of all the cigarette, stains of like the house and stuff. So yeah, stuff like that I've seen before. Like, cigarettes is quite a common one when buying antique clothing.
Yeah, didn't you set fire to a collar very recently? So I guess that one's not coming out very well after you starch it, is it?
Yeah, it was eventful.
Okay, maybe we'll talk about the great collar fires later.
I'm very intrigued.
It was very stupid.
Oh, tell us the story.
I was starching it, and I had it. To keep it in shape, I tied it around a saucepan. I got back very late from work and didn't turn on the light in the kitchen, put the saucepan on, forgot that was the one I had my collar thing, turned on the hob, and it
Oh, I thought you were like boiling and stirring, and one like hopped out to escape. You just absolutely cooked it. I hope it tasted good. I hope it was good with your pasta, Johnny. Okay. All right. So here's a quick one. Hopefully, do you think that antiques should be repurposed? So, changed into something else? Or I don't know, for example, so in London, there were lots of antique tailcoats that were kind of cut and extra fabric added to them that I saw, that kind of thing. What do you think about altering antiques for a different purpose? So we'll start with Jonny, as you clearly have changed yours into a meal. So
it really depends on how it's done and if the antique itself was in a very poor state to begin with. I do not mind if the antique was, say, unwearable as it was, and then they've put patches and done stuff to make it wearable again in its own way. I think where I draw the line is where you get a perfectly good wearable antique that, you know, has some historic life to it, a value to it, and would, for us collectors, be, you know, quite a desired piece when they get something like that and then cut it up and make something new out of it. And that's kind of where I draw the line.
Sad.
Yeah. And I've seen that done. I've seen people do it on Instagram and stuff like that. And yeah, obviously it is their own product, their own purchase. But I do find it very sad when they do that.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's somebody's own object, so obviously they're free to do what they want with it. But it is still heartbreaking to see, like,
it can still hurt.
We're still allowed to hate you. Yeah, we're free to hate. You're free to alter.
Again, going back to the subject of collars, I've had people buy collars off me before because I sell on Etsy and eBay, and they've messaged me and they said they've bought it for art projects for their school and stuff like that. And these are kind of like generic collars. Yeah, you know, and they, you know,
are they recreating Peter Pan and like drawing on the bibs or something? Like, what?
Yeah, they might be drawing it or you know, putting studs on it or something. I don't know, but they said they bought it for an art project, and you know, that sort of thing happens.
Okay, well, I think maybe it seems like everybody feels the same way, but does anybody have anything to add to those sentiments?
I think from a point of view of someone that likes to sew every now and then, if there is anything that is possible to salvage from a destroyed piece, like if you can still pick out some lace from an Edwardian dress that was cut in the 70s and is now a fancy blouse, then yeah, you know, do it. And, you know, anything we can save, let's just save it. But as Jonny said, when it comes to, like, I don't know, buying an antique Victorian petticoat that is like museum quality and everyone can confirm that is not something that you just stumble upon in thrift shops, then, you know, turning that into a modern, I don't know, a pair of shorts or something is a bit heartbreaking, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So I think it's just something that is like, it belongs to that person, but it also is like, we all benefit from seeing that. So it is also kind of difficult because, you know, there are also sort of like private collections that you can't really see. But I feel like if you show it on Instagram, then you have to deal with the people going like, no, please, just let us have another look at it before you do it.
Yeah, we kind of all curate our own private museums, really, don't we? And we let people in by taking pictures and stuff, don't we? That's quite a nice idea. Yeah, Tom, it sounded like you had something to say. I just changed your name, by the way, to Tom. I just figured out I could do that. So now you are now Tom again.
Well, no, but basically I had something to add, but then Karolina actually said it almost exactly the same as I had to add. Basically, it hurts to see people ruin something. Well, ruin according to, well, the perspective of someone who cherishes and values the worth of something old and potentially museum quality. But yeah, you should find a balance between can it be saved, can it still be used, or is it better to just, well, repurpose it and give it new life? Because I think it's, on the one hand, very selfish, so to say, to ruin something perfectly fine, but it's also very selfish to let something just rot away and not give it a second chance.
Yeah,
Just
that's so nice. That's a good point. Yeah, I agree with you both. I think the consensus is then, if it looks great, leave it alone or put it on and promenade as much as you want until you ruin it with your chocolate ice cream, or try and repurpose those things that are struggling, right? Okay, very nice answers, guys. So how often do you guys wear antique clothing? Is it a daily basis for everybody? Just maybe we can do hands. What do you think?
More or less, yeah.
More or less, not so much with my day job.
This is the more or less hand.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I personally wear it every day, even when I'm at work. My Japanese company is very strict on what you can and can't wear, and they told me once, like, this suit is too old. You look too old-fashioned. You have to change. So, like, I had to buy a modern business suit, but they didn't expect me to wear starched collars now, did they? They just can't tell. So I'm still kind of wearing it in some way or another. And of course, like, with not clothing, but like monocles and watches and such, I still wear those. So I guess that counts. Jonny, you're also wearing some nice glasses today, antique glasses.
Yeah. Recent purchase. Sort of 1910s, 1920s glasses with a celluloid tortoiseshell around them.
They look great. If anybody needs some celluloid rims, by the way, I've got loads. Yeah, these were just on my desk as you said that. That was really weird. But these are very flammable, so I probably shouldn't keep them anywhere near my hot PC.
Or Jonny.
Or me.
Or Jonny. Yeah. Don't wrap your glasses around any pants anytime soon, John. Okay. So are you guys more likely to wear reproduction, self-made, or genuine antiques? And we'll start with Karolina.
I read that question when you sent it to me, and I realized it depends on the time of the year, weirdly. Because in like autumn and winter, or maybe more autumn, I go for suits, and those are really hard to make yourself. And also reproduction suits do not give you that spicy silhouette. So I mostly wear like original suits in the autumn. Then in the winter, it depends. If it's really cold, then I need to go for something more modern. Or my friend recently made me a woolen jumpsuit that is based on 1940s design. So it's kind of reproduction. And then in the summer, I always feel bad buying summer things that are 1940s or like original, because I know that I can make those myself. So it feels like a waste of money to pay for a simple dress when I know it's going to take me like 2 days to make. So I either don't make anything, and then I don't have anything to wear because I promised myself I will be sewing stuff, which I did not. Or I do, and then I'm wearing mostly self-made stuff during the summer.
Yeah, that's a good point. The summery stuff is a lot harder to come by, isn't it? And I imagine with ladies' garments, they're much finer, and they probably get ruined a lot faster than some of the Palm Beach suits, for example.
Yeah. But also, like, the patterns are, I feel, a lot simpler and not as tailored as the wintry stuff. So it is easier for me to just make something than to look for it and pay a lot of money for it.
Nice. That sounds good. We should all just make our own things. Well, actually, all of you do. Just me. Okay. So we'll move that on to Jonny then. What about you?
It's a mixture of all of it, to be honest. I do tend to lean maybe towards the antiques, especially in winter. Again, a lot of them. But like at the moment, the collars reproduction, the waistcoats reproduction, the tie, the shirt, and the jacket original, and the trousers original. So it's, that it is a whole mix there. And then
you're wearing trousers?
Yes, I'm wearing trousers.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, you mentioned earlier that your waistcoat was reproduction as well. So it's good to mix and match as well, isn't it? Sometimes you really can't get the things that you're after, and To get that beautiful fashion plate look, you need some reproductions or self-made clothes. How about Tom, the tailor?
Well, my answer is actually quite similar to Karolina's one. It really depends on the season, but that's more to do with the fact that I think that vintage menswear in and on itself, from the period I like, so the interwar period, is itself a bit harder to come by in general. And if you find it, you often have to pay very large amounts of money for it. And especially summer wear seems to be even more expensive and more sought after, and also quite rare. So that's when I draw the line with, all right, I'll just make some summer wear, which I can also safely wear in the summer without sweating and ruining it. And well, in general, in the winter, yeah, I wear both things I make myself and true vintage garments. Well, just because A, I can make it, and B, ordinary wear, so to speak, is a bit easier to find than summer wear. So for example, this suit I made myself because, well, an original 1920s white linen suit, you don't really find this often. And yeah, then you still don't have the guarantee that it's clean or that it actually fits and that it will actually hold out for a very long time. So that's basically where I make the average of, do I make something myself or do I save up for something that's potentially my size and in a wearable state and I can actually afford.
Yeah.
So, and well, in terms of repro, as in newly made things that aren't from my hand, that really depends on the company, on where it's made, how it's made, and if it's an actually historically accurate reproduction or an average between historical looks and the modern pleasing aesthetic. So yeah. I'm very difficult with repro, but in general, I don't really wear a lot of reproduction clothes.
Yeah, that makes sense actually about the summer stuff. It does get expensive unless you can find those like rare barn finds, or if you go to like some French markets and you find some good stuff. I was lucky enough to come into a Edwardian 2-piece summer suit, but it was so damaged that I've like put patches all the way down the back and all the way around here. So my summer fashion is Edwardian hobo fashion. So that's what we have to deal with. Okay, so
one thing I wanted to say a little bit with the last question, a lot of the repo I've bought from theatre costume sales or from TV shows, prop stores when they're selling off some of their costumes, because I sometimes think that those are, if it's the costumes designer is good and done their research, they're usually a lot better made than a lot of the mass-produced reproductions that are out on the market.
Right. I suppose because they're also kind of bespoke, aren't they, to that actor?
For that, or for that, for that show.
Yeah, I had a few. I've got a few costume house stuff. Okay, so next question is, so the setup for this is that the women's vintage communities, it seems that antiques are kind of kept more safe, and women seem to make their costumes more often than the men, but the men are always posting, I found this jacket, this like original, and we're all wearing it and peacocking in them. Why do you think it is that men tend to wear their antiques more often and women seem to keep theirs more safe, if that is true? And we'll begin with the only lady here, Karolina.
I've been wondering about that actually, and I feel like there is two main reasons. The first one being that, generally speaking, like female clothing seems to be more fragile. As in, if you take a suit and you throw it around a bit or you sit on it, it's probably not going to fall apart. Whereas if you take even like an Edwardian blouse or something, even a cotton blouse, the cotton is already so thin that if you sit in it incorrectly, it's going to rip. And, even the dress I'm wearing today, I already found 2 holes in it.
Oh, no.
And I've been taking care of it. So, it does seem that if the clothing only has 1 or 2 layers, it's much easier for the seams to just fall apart. and there isn't as much construction going on. The jackets I have and the suits I have are generally sturdy and they don't fall apart. But anything that is like a dress, a blouse, they just tend to be a lot more fragile. So I think maybe that's why. The second thing is probably like trying to find the right fit. A lot of the female clothing is really tight around the waist, and generally speaking, you need the right type of silhouette, or you need the right undergarments. And a lot of ladies wearing pre-1920s stuff are struggling with that. I feel like you just have to not only find something that is perfectly fitted to your body, but also the right length, which in my case is really difficult. So that could be it. And at the same time, you do have a lot more, I feel, reproduction brands that are like bigger and more mainstream, whereas the men's fashion reproduction brands, I feel like, are very niche, and you have to know about them to know what you're looking for specifically.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, you're talking about like the other things, that the alternatives that are available for men are perhaps a little bit rarer, and there are only kind of some small companies that do clothing that genuine enthusiasts would find acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where do you go if you need like early Edwardian men's clothing? You don't have a single shop that is good quality tailored clothing that you know is going to look well and is historically, appropriate. So I feel like it's much easier if you're looking for like a 1920s reproduction dress, because there are several shops offering different types of dresses. So if you don't like one, you'll just go for another. Whereas I don't think there is like a clear place for men to just go and buy stuff.
Yeah, why is that? Guys, there's a business idea for us. We're going to mass produce. But you're right there. Sometimes you stumble across something, and I think you in your recent TikTok reaction video, you mentioned you bought this corset, but it didn't look anything like the picture. And we kind of have a similar thing where for some men's websites, they literally just show a fashion plate of the jacket they're selling.
Yeah.
And then you click on it and you go through the pictures and you're like, oh, it has like ridiculously padded shoulders, and oh, it's made of like 50% polyester. Well, maybe I'll skip on that one. So that could explain.
Yeah, I also feel like a lot of websites that offer men's reproduction fashion is like mostly for the husbands of women and like boyfriends of women that attend all sorts of events. And like they need to wear something because they don't want to be kicked out or like stand out. But it's mostly just like, acceptable enough for them to just agree to that. But it's not necessarily something for someone that is like passionate about the subject.
Yeah, maybe there's not a big market, maybe, for men.
I also find some of those websites that are made for men, sometimes they're for reenactors, and it's more either military based or sometimes it's ridiculously priced, and you buy an original for the same price that you're spending for this repo, or that's probably better made, the original. So yeah, I think that's usually the case.
Yeah, price definitely comes into it. What do you think, Tom?
Well, given that I have a girlfriend who also dresses vintage on a daily basis and also has a lot of original dresses, I can indeed testify that maintaining and caring for dresses, especially the summery silk ones, that's a fair share more difficult than maintaining menswear, because menswear you can patch up, you can darn it, but you can't darn a silk dress. So that's something which I can indeed agree with, that you should keep your dresses and such a lot more safer than you can keep a suit. Because after I've had a very messy week at which I had no time to clean up, you can sometimes find a pile of 3 suits and 5 pairs of trousers in the corner of my room. And I can hang them on a hanger, and within an hour they look like new again. Whereas if the missus does that with some of the dresses, it requires one afternoon of ironing and pressing and steaming and sometimes darning and restitching some seams. And well, in regards to the discussion about the reproduction for ladies being a bit more common than the reproduction for menswear, I think that also has to do with the fact that there's a bit more of a hype, so to speak, in the mainstream audience with the vintage look, by which I mean the sort of Hollywood interpretation of what a 1950s fashionable lady would have looked like 60 years ago. You know, the big dresses with the petticoats and ginormous prints of cherries and apples and polka dots. More of the modern interpretation of what it actually was back in those days. And with menswear, that's not really a thing. As in more, again, with the 1950s, 60s aesthetic and not really the pre-war aesthetic. It's a bit hard to get into words what I exactly mean, but when we talk about the repro brands, especially when it comes down to what both men and women can appreciate, it seems we're looking more into the rockabilly scene and not necessarily the pre-war scene.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think makes a lot of difference is, as I've also made a few dresses for my girlfriend, a dress I can make in 2 days, whereas a suit I have to spend, well, at least 2 weeks to get it perfectly fitted and quality-wise justifiable for a vintage look. And that also makes menswear a bit more expensive for the ready-to-wear market. And I think that's also a big difference. A low-quality ladies' dress in terms to a high-quality ladies' dress reproduction, you can see the differences, but from a distance, it looks fine. Whereas with a high-quality men's suit or a very low-quality men's suit, you can immediately tell the difference, whether it be from 2 meters distance or 50 meters distance. And I think that's also a very important factor in, well, that regard, that you either have to spend a whole lot of money on something that looks adequate, but is in cases of a certain menswear reproduction brand still not good enough, or it just looks like some sort of cosplay, which is not a bad thing, but for a historical reenactment, for example, that's not adequate. So I think it's a bit of a difficult situation in which you have to pick the average between spending a lot of money but still wanting to look the part. But you still have to decide at a point, is it not more justifiable to just spend the same amount of money on something that's original, or spend a little bit more money on something that's, for example, bespoke made and looks better?
Yeah.
I was a bit rambly, but I think I got my point across.
Yeah, makes total sense.
What Tom was saying there, I think, again, going back to the point that women's fashion, in like fashion and mainstream fashion, stuff like that, the vintage look does appear and is influenced by films and stuff like that, and TV shows, and you get it much more on the high street. Whereas where that happens in men's fashion, it's usually high fashion that does that. So like Ralph Lauren did a Great Gatsby range when the Great Gatsby came out, which is great, but that obviously has a much higher price tag to it with the high fashions that do that. So when a film influences menswear, it's menswear. It's not your Top Shop or your TK Maxx on the high street or something like that. It's your high fashion, designer brands that tend to do the sort of repos of that.
They're the ones that can afford the risk of not selling enough Edwardian overcoats.
Basically the same as Brooks Brothers did with The Great Gatsby in 2011, because they made a pink suit for Leonardo DiCaprio, which looked adequate for a 1920s look, but when they made the suit for the sale in store, it looked very different, because they really had to the modern market, which is a very interesting point that Johnny brings up, because even when they say they bring out something from the film or from a movie or from a series, it still is adjusted to the modern market.
That's true.
You never get exactly what a film illustrates, except the beautiful sweater that Tobey Maguire wears. They exactly make the same one for in-store sales, but besides that, it's all adjusted to the modern market.
You mean the red and blue one with the big spider in the middle? That one, that jumper?
No, it was the green one.
Only Karolina got it.
Only we got it.
She's the only one who got it.
That's because I'm a film studies major.
So I think you make a good point though. Yeah. There's also Peaky Blinders did the same thing, right? They had their own suits and hats on sale, but they didn't look anything like the suits that were in the show that aren't historically accurate. Like they went a whole extra level of inaccuracy there.
It's an inaccurate representation of an inaccurate representation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Levels on levels of inaccuracy, basically.
Bring up Peaky Blinders, because then we can start a whole new Zoom meeting about that.
Yeah, let's not go into. Well, it was like you mentioned earlier about being able to see things at a glance and tell that they're not quite up to scratch or that they're not originals. And we were like looking at some Downton Abbey clips together, if you remember, Tom, a while ago. Yeah. And we were like, oh, he's wearing an original jacket, but he isn't. But it's the same style of jacket, but why are they wearing it next to each other? Like, it's so obvious. Yeah. Like, this guy's shoulders are like up here, and this other guy looks like amazingly put together. And it's the same with the top hats. They've got some original top hats. Like, admittedly, most of them are like 30s top hats. But then they've got Victorian style top hats made out of like fur felt. And the curl, the pencil roll, and everything is so obviously modern. They should have really thought about how they arranged the people in the room so that it didn't look so obvious.
Critically, I'll always give Downton Abbey a pass.
Yeah, Downton Abbey is one of the best ones. It is.
Yeah.
All right.
It's already not the fastest-paced series ever.
Yeah.
How many times did I have to hear, Sybil, why are you in the drawing room? Yeah. So the next question, let's go through this. So it's how does the vintage community, say like collectors and wearers, differ in their approach to antiques to the costuming community, who maybe perhaps use them to study and make their own things? What do you think? Their approach to antiques? Any ideas? Is that a weirdly worded question?
Speaking as someone who has attended a few, so to speak, we have an event over here for a small group, the Victorian picnic. That's something that's mostly done by people in a costuming setting, and then I approach it with my tailoring. But the main difference, I think, is when we go there, my girlfriend and I, as vintage and antique collectors, when we wear something that I made, we accessorize it with genuine antiques. So, for example, she wore a 19th century dress, but she had an original 19th century velvet pouch with a silver sterling, handle around it, genuine antique earrings. Yeah, earrings. A brooch, and then I come along with an antique pre-tied tie, antique cufflinks, an antique shirt. So I make sure that it's all historically accurate, whereas their approach, from what I gathered, and I want to make very clear, I do not look down upon the costuming society, because I basically think that we are basically this different sides of the same coin. Their approach is more as we want to have the historical look. But for example, one of them was wearing a similar velvet pouch as my girlfriend was, but she bought a hanger, which was not silver and was actually reproduced from an antique one, and she made it all herself. So I think that's basically the difference, is that as a collector, you collect things and you wear it to make what you wear more grounded, so to speak, from your own perspective. And what the costuming society does is just create the whole look in a historical setting. And then it's just more about, it seems to me, about just having it and not necessarily it being antique.
Right.
Or from the time you're trying to make yourself appear in. And I think that's the main difference between the costuming society, so to speak, and the tailoring and antique menswear and women's wear part of the community.
So in this case, we're going for more like authenticity and using originals as much as possible. And maybe part of the costuming side is like making things is fun, reproducing things is fun. So it's all part of the thing. Like if I made something and somebody mistook it for an antique, I feel pretty good about myself, I must say. So Karolina, can I ask the question to you? What do you think of the main differences?
I agree with Tom. I think that the whole point of this hobby is making things and creating things. I mean, obviously there are people that are participating in events, but they bought the outfits, and that's okay too. It's just a different approach. But you know, most of the people are in the hobby for the joy of making things. So yes, I could get an antique hat, and it would probably look much better than what I can make. But like, what's the point? Because I could get an outfit as well, and then the whole hobby is like gone. So I like the example of the pouch, that you can get an antique pouch, but you can also spend hours of research and, you know, have a look at an original one and make one yourself. So it obviously, I think it depends on the approach, because I know a lot of costumers that are very successful in mixing original pieces with the stuff that they made. And I personally think it adds a lot of flavor to the outfit when you have like original pieces, or like chatelaines, or I don't know, jewelry and accessories and stuff like that. And it does spice up the outfit a lot if you have like stuff like original lace, or generally speaking, anything that is older than 1950s, because it does look different and it was made different. So I think it adds this little historical touches to the outfit. But at the same time, there are people that will make such lace themselves, you know, so it depends on what their goal is in this particular hobby and what their approach is. But I did notice that a lot of people are really passionate about the construction side of things. So they will have a look at antiques solely for the purpose of like looking at the guts and finding out how the boning was attached and stuff like that. Whereas maybe people collecting antiques are not necessarily that particular about it. They just enjoy the whole piece rather than, oh, this seam was done this way. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
That's a good point. There's like a whole new perspective, isn't it? When you're trying to build something, like as a collector, maybe I have many monocles. So I know the shapes of monocles and the kind of screws they have and how big they all are, but well, I don't know how to make one, you know? So it takes like that, a whole different perspective. Yeah, you know what the jacket looks like, but do you know what's inside it? And do you know how the seams are cut? Or how, it's very interesting actually. So it seems like for the most part in the kind of vintage communities, it's like if it's an original, it's an original. It's like the trump card. It's an original. And then if somebody's made something, I not personally, but it seems like the whole feeling is that it's like, oh well, yeah, he made it himself. It's reproductive. It's a reproduction. But it's an original. Wow.
I think it really depends who you talk to, because in the costuming community, if you go, I made it myself, you usually get the reaction of, oh wow, well done, and all that sort of stuff, and they ask you questions. But if you talk to people that just purely collect vintage, then it is just like, well, it's a reproduction. So, you know, it really depends who you're talking to, the reaction about that. Obviously, well, I think all of us pretty much do a bit of both. And, you know, I'm involved in the costuming community as well as the vintage and antique community. And what I find with the costuming community, there's much more events where they go, you know, we're going to do, like, I'm actually organising with Olga a 1890s picnic next month.
Yeah, jealous.
And then, but you get so many people like talking about what they're going to make, and you know, it gives them a date and a project, and they go away with ideas and they make stuff for it, and you know, and it's that sort of community vibe there and passion. I also take part in a lot of 18th century events, and sometimes I literally wake up the day before and go, I want a new hat for this. So, you know, I spend all day making a tricorn hat. And then it's usually done in the early hours of the morning, just before the event. So, you know, it's that sort of things that you learn new skills in the community, costuming community, and it's generally there's a nice debate and chat and sharing of skills as well, which is it's quite nice.
It's that big Venn diagram. So like they have quite a lot of crossover. Even people who just collect antiques, they have to do some kind of repair. They have to do some kind of small alteration. So everyone's kind of making something.
Sewing is a vital skill if you're collecting antiques. It really is.
You know what else is a vital skill? Finding needles when you drop them, because I've still got so many of those.
It's too short to pick up needles.
Yeah, I have like a bunch of needles, and they're all on the floor. So when I want to go sewing, when I want to sew something, I'm like, right now, where?
There should be one there.
Yeah, just walk around with a big magnet, just picking up needles. Very dangerous stuff. I mean,
always has us walking in bare feet in the house. You know?
Yeah, I guess you guys make like full outfits and stuff. I only really make small things, collars and ties and stuff, because well, you can see my bed on this side right here. Like I live in a box.
Welcome to Japan.
So yeah, other rich people have nice houses, but I have a teeny tiny house, so I don't even have space for a table. I eat here as well at this desk, so I don't have a space for a sewing machine, and I don't really have enough time to do everything by hand. But it'd be something great to get into, because there are lots of things I want, and I can't find them. I can't find them at all. And I guess you could spend, 5 years and 3 hours every day searching online for something, waiting for it to pop up on eBay, or you could spend a few months making it. So I think they do overlap quite a bit there.
You actually made quite an interesting point there, because we just had a bit of a talk about what was essentially people, gatekeeping, about whether something is original or reproduced. You will have gatekeepers in each and every community, wherever you look. And I once encountered in a certain event at which, we were all with people who dressed according to the interwar period. And I complimented a man on his jacket, because he was wearing a very nice 1930s style German sports jacket with pleats on the back, belt, patch pockets. I knew it was reproduced, but it was a very nicely made jacket, and it just looked beautiful. So I told him, that's a very nice jacket you're wearing. It looks very good. Thank you very much. And then another person tapped me on the back and he said, it's not real. I'm like, how? Why
doesn't
would that
take away from it being a nice jacket? Yeah.
Jacket, and not every person has the luxury to wait until something comes across.
Yeah. What does it mean it's not real? Go and touch it. It is real.
And I'm like, what? Why would that matter?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
You do find it at some events where people go, oh, you know, that's a bit costumey, or that's, you know, at a vintage event, or, you know, they look down on someone who's turned up in a bit of what they deem as costume. And I think, you know, if people are still making an effort, if they've made it, or even if they've bought it for the event, they've still got an interest to go to this event and try and wear something that looks appropriate. And I don't think anyone should be looked down on just because they might not be able to afford genuine antiques or so.
Also, it's very strange, because where does the line lie when it comes to like, it should be original versus it's too old, like the era is too old, so we know that it's hard to come by this stuff. For example, like I went to a Regency era ball and I met a guy that was wearing a 1790s vest, and I was like, oh, please don't drink wine. You know. But you know, So you can find stuff like this, but we don't expect people doing 18th century to wear original garments because we know that's too old. So like, where does the line, where is it? Like, is 1920s not old enough because you can still find the garments and therefore reproduction is bad? But then 1900s is a little bit harder to come by. So is it okay to wear reproduction or self-made stuff or bespoke clothing? You know, it's also subjective. So
yeah, that's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
It seems mainly like the 30s and 40s people are the ones who are like really obsessed with being original. I suppose because there's more of that around.
Are that part of the vintage community are the biggest pendants.
Yeah. They're also like the largest percentage as well. I think like that's the kind of the cutoff line where you're vintage, but you also can get away with looking modern. Whereas me and Johnny with our collars and our like antique ties, maybe to some people we look like we're wearing costumes. That's a great point. Where is the cutoff line? Yeah. So these guys have to wear originals, but these guys have to make it, because if they dare wear that 1540, these like museum pieces. That's a good point. I never thought of it. I never thought of that.
Well, to me, it depends on the approach someone takes. If someone wears it in a well thought out manner, in a way that's, well, respectful, sounds a bit dramatic, but it's conscious about the event where he or she is, then I'd say, all right, that's fine. But if someone actively wears it as a costume and acts like that and parades in it, then I'm like, you can get, it depends on the event as well. But if you're at a historical reenactment, you can't do that to me. But if you're at just an event where people are just having fun, then I really don't care if you're wearing something as a costume, so to speak.
I think, as I say, it really depends. At a reenactment, generally you're doing this in the UK, you're doing it for stuff like English Heritage or National Trust, and it's meant to be, you're a living museum, basically, where people can actually see and actually have a historic representation that's fairly accurate. And it's, you get school children or parties coming to learn from, how people would dress back in these days or live back in these days, or, the Napoleonic Wars or all that sort of stuff. It's a historical learning event generally for the public. So if someone's wearing a badly made, fancy dress costume, it doesn't give an accurate representation, and that's where it can be quite damaging to the view of historical clothing there. Whereas if it's a social event or a party or anything like that, then it really doesn't matter if you're still making an effort. And
I think that should be where the kind of costume line is drawn, right? If you bought it from a fancy dress shop, then maybe it's a costume. I was going to say, like, maybe you could, if the line could be
for a party.
For a party,
If for a party, that is still fine. A social function, you're not you're not going to the general public, this is exactly what they wore in 1780. It's
definitely situational. Like
it's sort of like a dress code, like you wouldn't go to an office in a bikini and complain about people looking at you weirdly. So same with events, you should always like adjust, maybe not even your costume, but your attitude to wherever you're going. So if you just want to have fun, you probably shouldn't end up at a very like closed reenactment event that is, as you said, Johnny, like specifically designed to teach people about that particular time period.
Yeah, it's like the difference between those Darth Vader masks that have like no back piece and people wear them to go drinking, and like Disney's like full-on Darth Vader outfit. Like, it's definitely situational how accurate you want something to be.
Well, actually,
what would you say, Tom?
Well, it actually reminds me of an event I was a few years ago. We have an event. It's called it's literally called the historical event, and it's situated at Huis Doorn. It's a castle where Kaiser Wilhelm lived in exile after the First World War. And it basically contains, well, parts of the history of the Netherlands and Europe. So you have a tent that's dedicated to the Second World War, to the First World War, the Napoleonic Wars, Stone Age, medieval. Very interesting on this very big estate, just different parts of history. And that was all awesome. And then there also was this tent dedicated to steampunk. And, you know, steampunk, I can appreciate it. It looks awesome, especially when people make this huge effort into making the most amazing mechanical things you can imagine. But it's not suitable at an historical event. I mean, you know, if you like steampunk, that's fine. I like it as well. But it's not historical.
Right, yeah.
It's also very hard to dismiss them because they still put effort in it and it looks beautiful, but it's not historical.
It's like wearing a spacesuit to a Victorian tea party, right?
Yeah.
Well, that, you know, steampunk and all of and cosplay and all that is very much costuming community, and it's you know, it's another level of artistic license and creativity. But it's not historical. It might take themes from history and adapt them, but it's not historical, and it shouldn't be at a reenactment. But again, at a party, absolutely fine. Yeah. If you want to turn up with, you know, Victorian clothing and some goggle, you know, cog spectacles or something, and, you know, which, you know, that's fine if you want.
I think it's just crucial to make sure. Sorry, to just check the description of the event beforehand and make sure it's something that is open to that sort of style. That should be fine.
Yeah, even people like
wearing to read the description.
Yeah, read your invite. But the people who wear like vintage and antique every day, they're not always going for authenticity. Like maybe most of the people we know at the moment, because we're so stuck indoors, is they're all on Instagram, right? So you'll see a post and it'll be like, here I'm wearing 1940s shoes and a 1920s tie and a 1910 shirt, and they put an outfit together, but it's not, the pieces don't match, but everything is original. And yeah, I guess the only time you need to be 100% accurate is if you are saying you're 100% accurate. Like, sometimes we have to go out to the shops and maybe we don't have enough time to put on our bib fronts and our collars, you know? So there are times when you can just relax and not worry about being authentic, because at the end of the day, we're human beings and we're living a life. We're not characters in a TV show, and we're not reenacting every moment of our lives.
I would say, with regards to something you just said there, though, with mixing eras,
yes.
As being human beings, you know, back in the time in the 30s or 40s, there's nothing stopping someone who, you know, had their favorite waistcoat when they were younger from the 20s or the 10s, put it on with a, you know, modern jacket. And, you know, humans do that. We do mix and match. And there might be something that they had in their wardrobe that they, you know, they put on all the time, or their favorite tie that's lasted a couple decades,
a million years,
you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's actually a good video on YouTube. It's like from 1929, and it says like interviewing the elderly people in America, and there's this old man with these huge Piccadilly whiskers, and he's wearing this very tall silk top hat, and the guy filming says, "Where did you get that?" And he said, "Oh, I got this when I was a boy." So that must be from like, you know, like the 1860s or something. Like, it must be a very bloody old hat, but he's just sitting there wearing it.
That's exactly it. Where, you know, even with if you watch the TV series Poirot, Poirot is dressed, you know, it's set in the 30s, but it's dressed very much in like 1910s, not, you know, a lot earlier clothing than his contemporaries in the show. Right. And then, you know, it goes with the character that he dresses a much older style than the 30s.
Okay.
Everyone else in the show.
course, all know that Winston Churchill bought his very famous Cambridge bowler in around the 1919, and he still wore it way into the 1950s. So
yeah, good hat.
things
So
are timeless. So
we've got a little bit off topic, a little bit, but I enjoyed it. So thank you. So I just want to kind of ask overall after this whole discussion, and I think I know what the answer is. But do you think that it's okay to wear genuine antique clothing in your daily life? So let's start with Jonny. You go first.
Yes, as long as it's something that is going to be survive wearing on a daily basis. If it is something that is delicate, or silk that's already fraying, or it's something that is very, very rare and could easily get damaged, then maybe not. Maybe just use it for a photo shoot, or as a study piece.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's made and is sturdy enough to be worn, with a lot of menswear, that's generally the case, then yeah, absolutely fine. And I see no problem with that.
Yeah, so don't put your arm in something that's gonna rip in two pieces, right?
Yeah.
Good advice. So what do you think, Karolina?
I definitely agree. I think let's just respect antiques. They don't necessarily have to be behind a glass, but if you're wearing them, just remember they're really old. So they might not necessarily be suitable to every modern activity.
So treat them like an elderly person and take it slow. Don't go rolling.
More or less, yeah.
Okay, very nice. Tom?
Well, I'm basically echoing what Jonny and Karolina are saying. I think, well, it really depends on if the place you're going to wear something is a, well, relatively safe place for it to wear. Like, for example, 1930s and 40s woolen suits. Yeah, you can basically wear those anywhere. And, well, if something gets stained, you can brush it off. If a seam rips, you can restitch it. But yeah, for example, a 1920 silk shirt, yeah, that's something I'd only wear when you know for certain you're not going to do heavy manual labor or going to sweat right through it or go to a place where it might get stained.
So if you're going to do acrobatics, take off the silk shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
preferably.
I wish I'd known that a few years ago. When I was doing track and field in my 20 silk shirts and my my linen trousers. So I agree with all of you people, which is why I invited you guys to this call. I think I wear antiques every day in either like a metallic capacity or a fabric capacity. So I obviously think that it's okay as long as it survives. I have many pieces that are behind glass or are in boxes and are safe because they can't stand up to regular wear or even handling anymore. So I've got like an 1880s tie in a little glass box because it's too fragile. I can't even touch it anymore without something breaking. So yeah, definitely knowing your pieces and knowing what they can withstand. Yeah. Okay. I think we all agree on everything. This has been the most peaceful debate of 2021. So before we end, I think we've gone over time a little bit, so I apologize for that. But does anybody have any final thoughts or final things that they want to say before the end? Not of the world, but of this call. Anybody? Any final thoughts?
Not really.
No, we're all brain dead now.
Well, I think if I really had to scrape the bottom of the barrel out, I would say whoever listens to this, whoever enjoys vintage menswear or vintage women's wear, be it in a costuming setting or be it in a historically accurate setting or a combination of the both. Really just do what you like, and don't take anything from gatekeepers, because they will generally only keep you down.
Yeah.
And most of the time, those pedantic people only think themselves good enough. So if you can't live up to their own standards, why even try?
With all of this,
Yeah.
we've all of us have had our own learning journey, and worn stuff that I've looked back on the past Instagram or past pictures and go, oh no, that probably wasn't a good look at the time. It didn't really work. But it's a learning curve, and anyone that's coming into this, if you have a passion and an interest to it, it doesn't matter what you wear to your first few events, or even events down the line. It's still a learning curve, and we've all had the same journey really. And you don't, unless you won the lottery, you can't go out and just buy all these antiques straight away. It's a collection. You build up these things, and so it takes time, and we've all learned that, and it really doesn't matter.
Everyone's different preferences. Every situation is different. You can go to the supermarket in pajamas and a top hat if you want, in your own life. So just match the clothing to the occasion, I suppose. Yeah, Karolina, did you have any last? I'm going to say last words, but it sounds so.
Oh my god!
Your final words.
Do I not know of something? I just agree with you guys. There is place for everyone in this hobby, so.
Yeah, screw. So we were going to talk about, is it okay to wear antiques, but instead we should change it to screw the gatekeepers.
I can't remember the note.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, this has been a really fantastic discussion, and I've learned a lot from you guys, and we spoke about a lot of things that I didn't expect to go into. So thank you all for spending an hour with me, or an hour and 10 minutes now of your time. So thank you very much, guys.
It's absolutely fun.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
See
you.
ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a nice day or night.
Got work in an hour.
Yeah, I might sleep.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.